Good day, everybody. Welcome to our monthly webinar on DALiM tips and tricks. Today we're going to have Alex Rogla do a presentation talking about versioning and sections and stuff inside of ES, going with the imposition side. So I'll keep it short and give him the ball here. And Alex, let me know if you get there.
Yep, I got it. So you should be able to see my screen with ES right now, correct?
Not yet.
I see it.
Okay, cool.
Okay, we're good. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to be talking a little about versioning and imposition within ES today. As a framework for discussion, I'm going to be walking you through the content lifecycle of a versioned news magazine. So, few prerequisites before you can deal with imposition in ES. You need a document workflow, which is used for file upload and processing and normalization. Few differences from a normal document workflow you're going to need here. You need a form workflow, which is going to be used to generate the imposed signatures. And you're going to need a JDF or CFF2 template with any associated PDFs for layout. And if you're using there's an option for step and repeat, that will generate that for you. But that's the basics, so let's go ahead and create a job here. Name this for webinar. And a few things to note in here. The first is under technical specs. You had a few options in here relating to imposition. You have your trim size you can set in here. You can set some options for creep if you're doing a larger book. You can set offset or rotation, maybe if you're using it for some packaging purpose, and you have some options down here. If you're using eTwist, you have some options for channel mapping and allowed colors. So all looks good to me. So on the versions and sections tab here in my create project window, I have two versions already created just for time's sake, Canada and subscription. And if I look at how they're set up, for imposition within ES, you need to define a version or some sort of page count so it knows how to impose those pages on a template. Two ways you can do that in here. The first is you can define a version total page amount. That's generally the easiest way. My content is 32 pages, so I can just type that in and be done with it. And for about 90% of cases, that's going to be the one way you want to go. However, if you want to do something a little more specific, you can define link sections using this little radio button here, and that'll open up this whole link sections area where I have my Canada version, my Canada section for my version typed out. And you have a few options as far as binding type, and those will adhere to general binding rules for that print process. So if I wanted to create a cover, for example, I could have that, let me actually move that up a little. I could have that so that pulls from a certain section, this wraps around this other section, allowing me to kind of sandwich stuff. Like, for example, if I wanted an inside front and back cover and an external cover, I could have those wrap correctly here and have them display on the flat plan in the correct location rather than be kind of sandwiched together at the end. One piece of note here as far as caution, because this has come up a few times with customers, the plus button allows you to create link sections, but the minus button doesn't delete them as you would expect. It merely unlinks them from this version. So let's say I didn't really want that cover version and I decide to unlink this. It looks like it's deleted, but it's still there. And in fact, if I click this link, this will show me any unlinked sections for that version. And you can see the cover still in there. It still has 4 pages, which are contributing for the total page count. And that can cause some issues if you've got a workflow or a job setup that is very dependent on all pages being in. So the best way I've found to handle these is I'll just pull that back in and set the page count to 0. A few of the other guys might know a more streamlined way to do that, but that's typically what's worked best for me. And then I can go ahead and unlink that. In this case, I'm not going to bother saving that, and I'm going to create one additional version called Newsstand.
Let's see, I usually just start over and delete everything.
Yeah, so I'm going to create a version called Newsstand. I'm going to do that the same way. And like I said, typically you would want to use the version total page amount. The reason I'm using link sections down here is I wanted a little more control over my name. Make sure I spell Newsstand correctly. 32 pages. All looks good to me, so I'm going to go ahead and save that. And the way this is set up now, we have our three versions. There's three versions in this test magazine: Canada, Subscription, and Newsstand. But they're all their own separate entities, which means that Canada's got its own set of pages, Subscription's got its own set of pages. Realistically, you're not going to have versions where every single page is different. So one thing you can do is, I'm going to use Newsstand as my master version. That's kind of my common version. Maybe a few pages in the Canadian version will be different. Maybe a few pages in Subscription will be different. But what I'm going to do here is click on my Newsstand version. I'm going to go to Version Children and link in my Canada and Subscription versions. Just did a select click there to select both of them. And I'm going to click OK and save that. And that's going to go ahead and create my job. If I look in there now, I'll see I have 3 sections in there for Canada, Newsstand, and Subscription. And let's upload some pages. I got a few pages in here for my demo. I actually have them set up with different colors so we can easily see how the imposition templates handle them. I'm going to select all those. And these are going to be automatically placed. I have a rule set up in my input channel that's going to pull the page number out of there, and it's going to pull a version code, CN for Canada, NS for Newsstand, or SB for Subscription, and place them on the appropriate folio and version. So while those are crunching, let's take a look under the hood. I have my document workflow here, prep for Impo. This is a very, very rudimentary workflow here. What it's going to do is it's going to accept a file in. It's going to link it to its spot on the flat plan based on the page number and version. It's going to generate a preview. It's going to wait for approval if there's an approver defined. I didn't do one just for the sake of time of approving about 60 pages. And then there's a second auto link step here. What that's going to do is once it's been approved, that's going to lock it into place and say, okay, this is in its final position. It's good. It's going to keep it there. And then ready for imposition is going to give a thumbs up to the form workflow to say, this page is good. You can have at it. Now for the form workflow, down here, what that's going to do is it's going to wait till the form is completed. Wait till all those pages are good to go. It's going to generate a imposed PDF form. It's going to look at the channel mapping for the job and then send it to eTwist. I actually have that workflow up here. Very simple. You don't need to do too much to configure. I just have an input files tool. I have a separation map, which is going to pull settings from ES based off that get channel mapping tool, and it's going to spit out a PDF. Once it comes,
clarify on that, the separation map tool doesn't really need any configuration because it's kind of working like the old channel mapper did in Mistral, where it just takes the information being fed through ES and handles it as needed.
Exactly, and you don't even need, the only thing you really need to do in there is you need to disable, let me actually pull that back, it's a good point. The only thing you need to disable is, there's an option down here, never entering in work item. Sometimes you might have this, I think by default it's set if it doesn't map, it waits for a validate or a work item of some sort. And if you do that in eTwist, it's just going to kind of get hung there, so you need to make sure to disable that. But once that comes back, it's going to wait for approval here. I have an approval milestone. Once it's been approved, once that signature has been approved, it's going to loop that into a document step, which is going to create a new document within my project. And the rationale for that's really that this workflow is meant to wait for all your pages to come in and then impose them. Once that's done and the channel mapping is done, it's really a normal document like any other page you would have in ES, and you can build document workflows to handle it that way. And in fact, in most cases, what you could do is loop this around and have another workflow pick it up, for example, to either send it to a RIP or generate virtual proofs or generate ink files for an ink monitoring system. So a lot of leeway there. And if you want to upload an imposition template now, what you can do is under print production, there's an imposition template feature. This will list every imposition template you have in the system. You have an option of uploading using the plus here. I have some filters up here if I want to look for a specific template. And if I actually click on this, it'll show me all the details of this template. So I can see, for example, how the pages are laid out, what their orientation is. Looks good to me. So I'm going to go back and see how my job's doing here. Okay, my pages look like they're uploaded, and actually what you'll see is we got a few newsstand pages here. We got a few other pages with this little icon, and what this means is that this content is versioned. It means there's multiple versions in that spot on that page in the flat plan. So if I actually click on this one, you'll see there are 3 versions in here. There's one for Canada, there's one for subscription, and there's one for newsstand. And the great thing about this is these actually interact. You can select them. You can do anything with them. Like if I wanted to go to File, Download, you can treat them exactly like any other page in the flat plan. So you got a very good 10,000-foot overview of what you have in your job. If you want to see more specifics, you can either go down to the section and see what's in there. I don't think this thing refreshed correctly. There's actually usually another option down here for, it'll show your version. But you can see, for example, for Canada, all my pages that were Canada specific, they came in. For anything that wasn't Canada specific, it inherits the page from the newsstand version, and the same with the subscription version over here. So those look good. Let's go ahead and create a imposition form. I'm going to go over to, there's under the job, there's an imposition forms icon. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to click on this plus to open the Imposition Wizard. Typically what this does is if it's your first time in a customer opening that up, it'll open up in this main screen, which allows you to choose your action. You can impose a section, you can create forms from an imposition template. Not too much of a difference there, really. They generally do the same thing. You can create a step and repeat, maybe if you want to plaster the same page over and over on a template, or you can just create an empty form where you can drop stuff in. So I'm going to impose a section. And the next screen here, when I click Next, it's going to show me everything I have available in my job. As far as sections, mine are all 32 pages, so I'm going to select them all. If I had a 4th section in here that were only 16 pages, I couldn't select that at the same time, because what this screen is doing is saying, pick some sections, I want to impose these all using the same imposition template in the same way. So I selected all my sections. I'm going to click Next, and it's going to show me every imposition template I have in the system that matches my job setup as far as binding type and number of pages. If I didn't have one I liked down here, I can always upload one using this button, but I'm happy with this 32-page saddle JDF imposition template here, so I'm just going to continue on and click Next. It's going to ask me to confirm my choice of form workflow. That looks great to me. It's going to ask me to look over channel mapping for colors and allowed colors. These all look good. I'm fine with just process color for now. If this is ever empty and you kind of want to cheat, you can click this little button up here. That'll add the 4 main process colors, so you don't have to individually link them. I'm going to click OK. And actually refresh my screen real quick. That doesn't always cut in correctly. So if I go back down to imposition forms now, you'll see I have 2 SIGs, 4 sides for each section of mine. I have Canada, I have newsstand, and I have subscription down here. And if I click on any of these, I can actually see a little more detail over here. Because these pages were all processed through the job, they've already populated into my templates. And you can see that, again, the subscription-specific pages were pulled in. For anything that wasn't subscription-specific, it's pulling the newsstand version as a kind of fill-in. But yep, those pages, they already went through the workflow since I didn't have an approver. So they locked, they're in there, they're all ready to go. And if I actually click over here and look at these, the forms generated, they're all waiting for approval right now. There's a few that are still going through channel mapping. But for this, if I want to approve, let's say I want this one form from Canada. I can click on this. I can show the PDF up here. I can do any editing or color mapping I want. I like it, so I'm just going to approve it. And now what that's going to do in my form workflow is flip it around on that document step. So if I come back up to the main area here, that's going to show up in my clipboard here. I can open that in Dialog. I can deal with that in any other way I want. That is my completed imposition form. I got all my information on here. That's all good. So that's typically what you would do if you want to get a little more tricky if you're dealing with this in a production situation, like I mentioned earlier, is you could have an input rule that's set to find anything with that name and either send it to another specific workflow for imposition or just file it away somewhere. But that's how that works. And as far as naming, this is a custom name. How you can configure that is if you go over to the Administration tab and select your customer. I got my guy here, Forms Inc. If I click on him under my project templates, I got one here, new 32 page. And if I look under form workflow, there's an option in here where you can select what kind of pattern you want to use to name your form. And there's a few different variables you can use in there. By default, it'll just wind up being just surface name, just that sheet 2 back, which isn't super descriptive. From the ES manual, here's a full list of what you can choose. For example, you can have a customer name, job name, you can have the run order, anything about surface side or name. So you got a lot of control over how you name these. So that's all well and good, but let's kick it up another notch. I got another document actually set up here called splits. What if we wanted to do a split as far as a template? Another job set up here. I'm going to upload some pages, and then while those are crunching through, give you a little detail on what's going on. So as far as a job set up for the splits, if we go back into the jobs ticket and look at versions and sections, I have one version here just called newsstand. I have a few sections. I have a cover section which wraps around. You've got the front inside and outside covers and the back inside and outside covers. They wrap around. They're actually mapped with a mode called prefix plus project folio. What it's going to do is note them with CV in front of the name. So my cover is CV1, CV2. That'll tell you that that is a cover page so it doesn't blend into the rest of the flat plan. Then I also have my body down here. I have 24 pages for my body. So that looks good. So as long as you have a imposition template that's configured or enabled for splits, what you can do is go down to print production, imposition templates. I like my 32-page saddle stitch, so let's open that up. And if I go over to imposition splits, there's an option in here called new split. If I click that button, it's going to give me a color here. So I got blue. And what I can do is actually let me check auto backside too. That'll automatically mirror my split on the backside. So it's like those 4 pages and each side. And now I have a split. And if I want to create another, I click again, I get a different color, and I can define the entire rest of the form as another split. And when I click OK, it's going to warn me that this is a permanent action. You're changing your template, you're changing the page order. So you can actually set it to duplicate. So I don't want to overwrite mine, so let's name that webinar split. And now it's going to pop into the system as its own imposition template. So if I go back to this project now, that should be uploading as we speak. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and create some imposition forms. Once again, same screen. I'm going to select my covers. Like I mentioned before, if you try and select the body, it won't let you because they're different page count. You can't impose them using the same template. So when I click next, it's going to show me anything in the system that is an imposition template that's either an 8-page imposition template for my binding type or an 8-page imposition template with it, or a imposition template with an 8-page split within it, which in this case, webinar split, that's a 32-page imposition template, but I got 8 pages cordoned off for my covers. So click next. It tells me, hey, there's another split on here. I can use my body pages in there. Click next. I'm happy with my form workflow, and I'm happy with all those colors, so let's just roll. And what you'll see this time is we actually hit a few roadblocks this time. Let me actually pop back. I'll show you in the job what's going on here. If I look at this, notice we got a few funky icons up here for these covers. Looks like they have a spot color in there. And actually, because this is something I know some production people do like to do, if you'd rather than dealing with the spread splitting tool, just upload spreads and manually offset, you can do that. And here, for example, you have a spread that was uploaded twice into 2 positions for manual offset. So what we can do about both those is let's go back to the imposition forms. And if we go to, for example, this form down here, you'll see we've got one of our split pages in here. It actually picked the correct sides this time. But if I wasn't happy with how those split, what I could actually do is I could change the offset. So if I wanted to offset that by 9 inches, I could pop that in there. It's the wrong direction. Let's try. And you can flip those around. But you have some other options as far as rotation and other utilities in here as well. There we go. Signature's hiding on me. So yeah, to show that again, if I wanted to flip this, I can just put in my 9 inches here. Can't type today. I'll move my stuff over. I can do rotation or offsets or anything I want in there. As far as if I need to enlarge a page, it's all covered. Now, regarding the spot colors here, you'll notice that these errored out in the workflow at that get channel mapping because there was no channel mapping for a Pantone in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to this color mapping area up here. It's going to show me you have a Pantone 328C, which is not mapped. So I'm going to go over, let's say I'll convert that to CMYK. Then what you have to do is restart the workflow and it'll push that thing back through.
If you use kind of generic colors on your imposition templates like spot 1, spot 2, that's just where you'd map that as well. You can map that Pantone to SSI spot 1 color on your imposition template so it shows up there.
Exactly. Yep. As this thing crunched through, it created a new document. And if I actually go back up here, you'll see once again that that was deposited down here. And if I actually download this, and go to my output preview, you'll see there's no longer a spot color in here. It's all processed. So that's all set up. That's the basics of how you can do imposition and versioning within ES. Just as a brief mention, didn't have too much time to go over. There are a few other features in here we can talk about at some point if you guys are interested. You have options for, I think this is still a bit under development, but marks where you can automatically place based on a press type different marks on an imposition template while it's going through. You've also got the opportunity to create press classes where you can define a certain type of press and then link imposition templates to it so that you can easily find them. So for example, if I have certain templates I only use on my Gauss or certain templates I only use on my digital HP Indigo, I can separate those out and keep those together so it's easier to find them in a system where you're dealing with a lot of unique imposition templates. So a lot of ways in here you can deal with imposition in ES. You have a lot of control over versioning and a lot of fine-grained stuff. So that's the basics. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, there's a couple of questions that came in, Alex. Good job on that, by the way.
Thanks.
First question, user wants to know if it's necessary to have e-twist for the imposition option, or can you use traditional twist? From our understanding from DALiM, you do have to have e-twist. The main part I see that you have to have it is for all channel mapping stuff. The channel mapping is actually communication between ES and the e-twist server. That information doesn't get past a traditional twist server, so you need e-twist for all the channel mapping stuff, which is pretty important on the form workflow to create the plate, or on the page workflow up front if you want to do, like I recommend, color conversions up front at the page level. Either way, you have to have the e-twist option to use that separation map tool that way. Another question, and this is one actually that that Alex was trying to prepare for this demo, is whether the fully automated JDF imposition exist yet or is available yet, as Christoph shown it at the last couple of demos. And from our understanding, no, that's not an available option in the US yet. We heard it is working only for web presses, but it's still not an available option for us to get our hands on yet. As soon as we have it, we're open. As soon as ES5 comes out, we should have that available, and we'll do a webinar specifically to everything we learned, hopefully, after the Worldwide Technology Meeting on that function. All right, and the last question I have here is, let's see, I think what's being asked is, okay, on a JDF, if you create a job via JDF, can you assign imposition templates? From where I understand it, we've done with a couple of customers is yes, if the imposition exists inside of ES, it will assign it to the job properly. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Mike, you may be able to correct me if I'm wrong, if the JDF has a path to the JDF and PDF, it can also pick it up and upload it into ES as well and assign it, even if it doesn't pre-exist inside of ES.
I haven't seen that behavior. That doesn't mean it doesn't do that. But I haven't seen that attempted.
Sure, yeah. Everything I've played with is the Imposition templates already exist or have been uploaded into ES, but it does get assigned properly to the project, to the sections inside of a project as the JDF file would dictate. And I think that was all the questions I had. Mike, you have anything for Alex? You did a good job on that one.
Yeah,
okay.
Very good.
Great. All right, everybody, so just a reminder, if you go to our events page on blanchardsystems.com website, you can get the dates of when the upcoming webinars are. As soon as we have the topics for the next one, we'll publish those and send an email out to everybody. Again, you're welcome to please submit to text@blanchardsystems.com any ideas you have for an upcoming webinar. I think we've done a few ES in a row, so Mike and I will put our heads together and come up with a good twist related topic for the next one, I think, unless there's a very important ES one that we need to cover. So, all right, thanks for your attendance, and hope to see you on the next webinar. Everybody have a good week. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.